2017-2018 school year. It is so exciting to see each and every one of you gathered here today. Are we ready for the 2017-2018 school year? Before we actually get started, I'd like to introduce to you one of our beautiful children, Miss Kendall Mangum, who is going to take us through the start of our convocation by singing to us, God Bless America. So let's give it up for fourth grader, Miss Kendall Mangum. She's going to do it a cappella too. We ask that you please stand.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
How could you not have tears in your eyes? This is beautiful. And this is why we are all here. This is a wonderful way to set off our convocation. Kendall Mangum will be singing God Bless America at the Town of Greenburgh 9/11 event. And so those of us who are fortunate enough to be there on 9/11, you will hear Kendall sing this beautiful rendition of this song. Didn't she do a wonderful job? Let's give it up for Kendall. R.J. Bailey. So I guess you want me to do roll call then, right? I was trying not to do it because I have an abbreviated convocation and I'm very limited in time, but since you want me to do it, let's see who's really in here. All right, Highview, where are you? Where's Lee F. Jackson? Right. Oh, here we go. Where's ECP? All right. So this year we are Woodlands Middle High School. We're not separate, we're one building. So Bailey, Woodlands Middle High School, let's get it together. Where is Woodlands Middle High School? It's a competition, Bailey. You ready? Where's Bailey? Mr. Warner, I promise not to do roll call, but they made me do it. All right, awesome. Where's the mansion? All right, beautiful, beautiful. We're all represented. Again, you guys look absolutely fabulous. You have no idea what an honor it is to serve in my third year as your superintendent. It has been such a pleasure working alongside you, working with you, working through you, and working for you, more importantly. I take what I do very personally. This morning I was up literally at 4 o'clock thinking, what do I say to you? And how exciting this is. And as I'm going into my 24th year as an educator, I have to admit, this is the most exciting time, and this is my 24th time feeling this level of excitement. So I thank you for continuing to ignite that excitement, and I know so many of you feel that way. As the board members and I walked through the schools the other day, we saw teachers who were already anxious to get into their classrooms and design their classrooms and decorate. In fact, I met one teacher at Highview who said, I couldn't sleep because I wanted to make sure that my classroom was ready for my students. That speaks volumes of who we are here as a school district. And for that, again, I am honored to serve as your superintendent. This year, we decided to do something a little different. Typically, during our convocations, you all are here in this auditorium for a pretty extensive amount of time, and I bring multiple speakers to bring you all greetings. I decided to do something a little bit different because I understand the importance of time. So I'm going to abbreviate my portion this year, and what I would have done for you is I'm actually going to deliver to you an electronic version. I know that the electronic messaging has been extremely popular and well received. So Tuesday morning, when you are ready to receive your students, please check your email for an electronic message for the extended version of this convocation. This is a truncated version, and I've done this so that your principals will have an opportunity to meet with their entire staff, and on your agenda you will see where you should have those meetings. Before we actually continue with the convocation, I would like to introduce a few people who are here to bring greetings to you. I'm going to start with our town supervisor, Mr. Paul Feiner, who will bring greetings to you on behalf of the town of Greenburgh. Supervisor Feiner.
Thank you for inviting me. I've said this in the past and I'll say it again, this is definitely my favorite school district in the whole town. And when I'm invited to other schools, I tell them that they're my second favorite school district, which doesn't always make me that popular. But the reason I like the school district more than any other school district within Greenburgh is because there's so much energy at Greenburgh, at the Greenburgh School District and at Woodlands. There's a lot of enthusiasm among the administrators. The teachers, I think, are fabulous, and I'm really very, very impressed and have always been impressed with the innovative programs. Many of the programs are much better than any of the schools. In fact, if I had gone to Woodlands, I probably wouldn't have a regular old-fashioned wristwatch to be able to figure out the digital version. But I basically have invited students to town board meetings, and have been very, very impressed with how smart they are, how respectful, how eloquent they are when they make presentations. We've had student interns during the year, and I've been impressed with their quality. In fact, this year some of the student interns interviewed the playwright for Oslo, which won the best show in the United States. Some of the students have been nominated for Emmy Awards, and that's really because of the foundations that you've given them. You've set standards, you've given them the training, and they've done a really good job. So my recommendation is to continue to do what you do, and to recognize that you're changing lives one at a time, and really making a major difference in people's lives. This week the County Press, Washington County Press, did an article about one of your recent graduates. Remember Awa? And he graduated Harvard. He's in Harvard, and now all these top financial organizations are trying to snatch him for next summer. And that's because of you. That's because of the work that you've done in terms of training him and giving him the preparation. So again, I really admire everything you do, and keep up the great work.
Fantastic, and thank you for your continued support. We really appreciate all that you've done for us and helping to build our PR as well. Now I'd like to call our board president, Mr. David Warner, to offer brief words as well.
Or perhaps not so brief words. Ni hao, buenos dias, good morning. Greetings on behalf of the Board of Education. We're all leaders on a journey toward creating a world-class school district. We're educating our students to be lifelong learners who will successfully engage in a rapidly changing, interconnected global community. First, welcome to the new staff members, and thanks to all the Greenberg Central veterans for all your hard work in the past years. Thanks to the teachers, the assistants, the aides, the administrators, the coaches, the support staff, whether you teach students directly, rally the troops, manage the money, maintain the facilities, support technology or the arts, or address social or psychological issues. You are integral to our students' education, and we appreciate your contribution. 谢谢您, gracias, thank you. This morning, I'd like to talk about the kind of world we're preparing our students to live in and the tools they need to succeed in that world. Our students will live in a diverse, complex, ever-changing world. To survive and thrive, they need to become technically proficient, multilingual, lifelong learners who understand and respect cultural complexity and diversity. This may sound familiar. I told you this last year. I said, 1, the robots are coming. I talked about the cars in Pittsburgh that drive themselves and the automated factory floor at Amazon.com. I said the routine jobs are being taken by machines. We need to teach our students coding and engineering concepts. It's still true. The world is becoming more complex. I cited involvement in the Russian government in the presidential election cycle as an example. Our students must develop a global worldview and research skills to distinguish good sources of information from not so good sources of information to understand the world. 3, language is key. Our students will have a competitive advantage in international business if they learn multiple languages. I gave examples of how keyboards with simplified Chinese characters opened the market in Asia, and how having a bilingual Spanish-speaking test engineer helped my American-based technology company support clients in South America. Page 2. 4, respect other cultures. I gave an example of an old guard Japanese corporation that created a false technical issue just to see whether my company would respect their social hierarchy and with dealing with them. When we showed respect, the technical issue disappeared and they said, "You have done well. We will continue to do business with you." It's all still true. Technology, research skills, multiple languages, respect for other cultures are all parts of what we need to teach our students to survive and thrive in the world. All our progress in the areas of STEAM and the International Baccalaureate program and improving our language offerings are based on this. So, what has changed since last year? We had a presidential election last November. It was divisive, and a variety of domestic, international, environmental, and social justice issues continue to divide the country. In GCSD, we're sitting in a bubble of relative enlightenment and mutual respect. It's not perfect, but for the most part, it's good. The environment our students are moving out into when they graduate is not as friendly, and may continue to become even less friendly over time. Our base mission remains the same, but we need to emphasize persistence and courage in the face of adversity, something embedded in the IB learner profile that includes being principled and being a risk taker. It's something commonly known as grit. Your character is what you do when nobody is watching or peer pressure is pushing you in the wrong direction. It's just you and your principles. If you do the right thing, you are principled. Being a risk taker means approaching uncertainty with forethought and determination. Our mission, in addition to everything else, is to instill grit into our students so that when they are challenged, they won't give up. There are different levels of grit, which I'm going to call big grit and small grit. Big grit is the level of courage and persistence required when large moral issues are on the line and the stakes may be your life. Small grit is the level of courage and persistence you need to deal with everyday challenges, where the stakes may be your livelihood or your quality of life. Examples of big grit: Martin Luther King continuing with his ministry in spite of death threats, Mahatma Gandhi pushing the British out of India through fasting and prayer, and Nelson Mandela spending 27 years in prison to free South Africa. Examples of small grit, and this is the important part, so I'm going to give 4 examples. Example 1, Dorothy Vaughan in Hidden Figures. Has anybody seen the movie Hidden Figures? Raise your hand if you have. Yes, good. In the biographical movie Hidden Figures, a group of African American women perform mathematical calculations by hand for NASA. They're working in Langley, Virginia for the Mercury space program in 1961. Sputnik just orbited the Earth, so the space race is on. Dorothy Vaughan is the mathematician's group supervisor, but she's a black woman, so the administration doesn't bother to pay her as a supervisor, or treat her with respect, or tell her what's going on. NASA starts the installation of an IBM mainframe computer that will eliminate her group's jobs, but she finds out. She borrows a computer book from the whites-only section of a Virginia public library and uses it to teach herself and her co-workers the Fortran computer language. So they all continue to have jobs programming the computer, and she ends up getting paid for her position. That's grit. Example 2, Oscar. At the Woodlands High School graduation ceremony last year, I told you about an engineering student I knew in college named Oscar. I compared him to a tortoise among hares. Oscar wasn't afraid to ask stupid questions, showed up for class, worked on the hardest problems, and made lots of mistakes. But he never gave up and finished in the top 5 of the class. That's grit. I'm a retired software engineer. The last 2 examples are from my years in in a research and development environment. Example 3, Lan. Lan was a female software engineer who applied for an embedded software job when another engineer left our company. Embedded software engineers made more money than regular software engineers, and they were almost always men. But if Lan wanted to attempt the job, she was welcome to try. What they didn't tell Lan was that the code she would work on was specifically designed to promote engineered job security. Essentially, it was encrypted. Nobody could read it but the engineer who wrote it. Lan was expected to fail, and the old engineer would be called back as a consultant at twice the money to update the code. Every day for several months, when we came to work, Lan was already there. And when we left for the evening, Lan was still there. Lan was too stubborn to fail. Eventually, she cracked the code and kept the job. That's grit. Example 4, last example, Roger A. Word came down from management that the revenue stream from our product was declining, and we had a year to generate new revenue or close our small facility. There were 20 engineers on staff, and 19 of them found other jobs or sat around and waited to be laid off. The other engineer was Roger A. Roger A. came from a military family, and some of his pre-college education was in Europe. The curriculum resembled the International Baccalaureate program. Roger not only knew how to code, he knew how to think outside the box and design and create things. He designed and created an email application for our laptops and earned about 1/3 of the revenue needed to keep the facility open by himself. He inspired considerable admiration and some jealousy among the other engineers and had no trouble landing his next job. That too is grit. So, as we take our students from being toddlers to young adulthood, provide them with a sound basic education, and help them learn technology, language, and international cultures, they deal with situations like Dorothy at NASA, Oscar in college, Lan and Roger A. in career environments. Our challenge, in addition to everything else, is to instill grit into our students. On behalf of the Greenberg Central School District Board of Education, Juni Hayun, buena suerte, good luck, and remember, grit.
Thank you so much for those inspirational words. I also would like to acknowledge Mr. Lloyd Newland, our past president, board trustee. Please stand up, Mr. Newland, let us see you. Thank you so much for being here. I have a few more very brief greetings. I also would like to acknowledge the union leadership in the room. Vicki Kravis, please come up and bring greetings to the entire staff and faculty. Come on up, Vicki. Or you can do it from here, whatever makes you comfortable.
Hi. Good morning, Dr. Chase, members of the board, administration, GTF, CSEA, and GCSO. I want to acknowledge the members of the Greenberg Civil Service Organization. As I call your department, please stand up. Monitors, school nurses, stand up. Teacher aides, one-to-one aides, welcome back. Those of you who are 12-month secretaries, clerical staff, the tech department, and our intrepid custodial department, everybody up. Give yourself a big round of applause. Thank you. Now, I have just one note. Please be in the wise room at the high school at 2:45. I promise to be short. We have a GCSO union meeting. We also have snacks. And I wish you all an exciting and productive year. Thank you.
Mr. Dan Rivy, representing GTF.
Good morning. Dear members of the GTF, that means all members. So let's do it like this. Would you please rise? That's my teacher's assistants, please. My guidance counselors, my social workers, our psychologists, our teachers, our speech. Let's stand up. Let's represent just like they represent, right? That's all we can do? Thank you. I would like to sincerely thank all the hard work that many of you have done recently and in the past. I would also like to thank in advance all the members of the GTF in our continued support of the district's mission in enriching all the lives of our students and helping them reach their full potential. With that said, I'd like to share a story about a young boy and his struggles getting to and from school from Les Brown. There was a young boy on his way walking to and from school. He had to confront a nasty, vicious dog who would chase and bark at him every day. This went on for some time until one day he decided to confront the dog. He got a big stick and a big brick, and as the dog came that day, the boy stood his ground. The dog stopped, sat, looked up. When the boy looked down at the dog, he realized the dog had no teeth. As we all go through the year, remember that things aren't always what they seem. Face your fears with your chin up. Please support one another. And our mission of our students, remember to be, you're blessed, and it's not always, it always can be worse. So have a good year. God bless.
Representing the Administrators Union, this is Patricia Simone.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm so honored that my colleagues have nominated me to be the Greenberg Administrators Organization Union President. First, I would like to have them stand up, give them a round of applause for all the hard work that they do. They come to school ready every single day for our children. Our goal is to work collaboratively with GTF, Civil Service, and Central Office by putting students first. We want to have open and honest conversations so we could address the district's strategic plan, the district vision and goals, and to implement the educational programs. We look so forward to working collaboratively with all of you. And just to bring a thought to your mind, when it rains, look for rainbows. When it's dark, look for the stars. We want to implement the best by putting students first. Have a fabulous 2017-18 school year. Thank you.
When I send emails to you, I typically open up by greetings, Greenburgh Central School District family. And we are a family. Unlike family, sometimes we have differences, but for the most part, we support and we acknowledge one another. Our family has grown, and I'd like to introduce you to some of the newest members of our family. First, and I'm only going to take about another 5 minutes. I'm going to shorten my presentation even more so. First, I'd like to introduce you to our new Director of Technology, Mr. Carlos Ramirez, who's in the back. Many of you know that last year we decided that this year's theme would be building global learners. And so we need someone to help us, lead us in that direction. As many of you know, we'll be implementing a new Mandarin program, and hopefully our high school will receive authorization to become an IB high school, and we will be able to distribute IB diplomas to our students, and I think that's an amazing feat. So we need someone to help us lead that, and so we've hired Mr. Brendan Gallivan, who is our Director of ENL, World Languages, in IB. Brendan is here. We also have a new transportation supervisor, and that is Miss Allison Halleck, who's received numerous shout-outs on Facebook already. Allison, welcome. And many of you know this face, although she's retired, she's back. Miss Miriam Burnaby, who is our arts and education consultant. She hasn't gone anywhere, she just can't help herself. In addition, we've hired some talented teachers. New teachers, where are you? Please stand up so we will recognize you. In just a few short minutes, when you meet with your building leadership, you will hear more from the new teachers who are hired, but we also hired some awesome non-instructional staff in civil service. Where are you? Please stand and be acknowledged if you are here. Come on. I saw the nurse in Leah Jackson. I see you, Princeton. There you go. There you go. Welcome. All right, really quick, I'm going to ask you to take out your agenda. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we transition to our next task. We'll be meeting with our building level leadership very shortly. You will see where you're designated. Regardless of what it is that you do within the building, all staff, faculty, will be expected to meet with their building level administrators. Then we will convene back here in the auditorium at 10 o'clock for our second wave of UDL training. We are year 2 of UDL training. Lunch is at 12 to 12:45, but before we go to lunch, I do ask that we meet at about 11:50. I'm sorry, that we meet, yes, at 11:50, that we meet in the, at the soccer field so that we can take a group picture. We'll take a, I'm sorry? At the soccer field so that we can take a group picture. At 1 o'clock, we will continue with our UDL training. Sign out is at 2:45. I'm gonna give up a little bit of my time so that you can have your union meetings as appropriate. There is a couple of changes that I do want to bring to your attention. The mansion staff will have their meeting at 1 o'clock at the mansion, so please meet in the boardroom. And those who received an email about the nonviolent crisis intervention training, that training is not at 9:15, that training is at 10:15, and it will take place in the large gym. Okay, does that work for everyone? Got it? Okay, before I send you off on your way, yesterday, I distributed a letter to the Greenburgh Central School District family and communities about some of the things that our students have been exposed to in the last couple of weeks. Many of our children will be returning to school, and some new students will be entering our school, having been exposed to some of the ills and the plagues of our society. If you didn't get a chance, I ask you to go onto our beautiful app. I ask you to go onto our fabulous Facebook page and our Twitter to review the letter. Review the resources that I've provided for parents to speak to their children about bigotry, discrimination, and unbecoming behavior. Before I dismiss you, I want to be clear to each and every one of you. Under no circumstances will discrimination, bigotry, or any sort of inappropriate behavior be tolerated in this school district. Not on my watch. As we watch the events of Charlottesville, Virginia unfold, and I went to college in Virginia, my father, who's only in his early 70s, shared a story with me that I had never heard in my entire life of his experience growing up in the South and interacting with the Ku Klux Klan, and I never knew that. It brought up feelings and memories that were unspeakable. Our children are going to have questions. They saw samples and examples of biases. They're going to want to talk about it. It is our obligation to have those courageous conversations with our kids. It's our obligation to make sure that our conversations are also responsible. It's our obligation to teach children to discern from fact to rumor. It is our obligation to teach children, too, the importance of love and kindness. And we do that in our behavior with one another. We do that in our behavior toward our children. Our children are watching us. We can't say one thing and do another. I'm going to repeat that for those who said that's right. We can't say one thing and demonstrate something else. As my beautiful rainbow children enter, and I call them rainbow children, because we have representation in this school district like no other, and it is fabulous. And when our beautiful children enter our schools on September 5th, they are expecting your very best. And I'm expecting for you to give them your very best. I'm expecting for each and every one of them, of you, to embrace and acknowledge their uniquenesses, their differences, their ideas, their background. And you have done that. But I want us to continue to do that. And even more so, now that we live in an environment where sometimes children will even question themselves based on what they're seeing and what they're hearing. The last thing I'm going to talk about before I send you on your way is expectations. Your principals very shortly will review with you their data that we received. They will review with you their goals based on the goals that we've set, and you'll see that video on Tuesday. And they're going to talk a lot about expectations. One of the things that I've learned in my tenure as an educator is that children will rise and children will fall to expectations. When we set our expectations high, watch how students will soar. However, when we have low expectations, students will stop just as that. You know, I'm always cautious when people say things to me like, wow, when Woodlands kids come to our school district for games, they're so well behaved. Or when people make comments such as, wow, I didn't know your kids do that. That tells me you have low expectations. In fact, I interviewed a candidate for a position in the school district. And through that interview, the candidate said to me, one of the things I'd like to do with the children is, I'd like the children to do X, Y, Z, because if I get into detail, you'll kind of know what position. But I'm sure they don't have those things, but, I'm going to see if they can do it this way. And, the children are so well behaved here, and they kept making comments like that. And I said, well, what did you expect? That person didn't get the job. You see, we've got to have high expectations of our children because there are so many people who know nothing about Greenburgh Central School District who have low expectations of us. When I go to events, I still hear, wow, is that what you're doing? Is that right? And I still hear people who believe that we will not be a world-class school district. You see, we're putting in place rigorous programs such as Mandarin Chinese from K through 12. Yes, our children will be speaking fluently by the time they get into high school. We're putting IB in place so that our students can graduate with an elite diploma, an IB diploma where they can compete worldwide. We're putting in place AP programs, electives. We're putting in place all sorts of programs, just even with our Wilson Reading program, to ensure that our children are literate by the time they reach grade 3. We're doing this because we have high expectations for our students. Our students will rise to the occasion if we change our mindset and if we can believe. I'm going to leave you with a quote that I found this morning, literally as I was standing here. High achievement always takes place in the framework of high expectation. Our children will soar if we continue to believe that they can. I want us to take out of our framework, this is Greenberg. That's the Greenberg way. It's always been like that at Greenberg. Because if we expect higher results and our mentality says it's always been that way, then it is the definition of insanity. I expect that each and every one of you will have a fantastic school year, and that you will continue to hold our children in high regard, and that you will continue to see the beauty and the value in each and every one of them, and believe that they can soar, and that they can achieve greatness. My expectations are extremely high. Otherwise, I would be doing something else, because with all due respect, board members, this ain't worth the money. I want you to have that belief and know that we as administrators, we as teachers, we as the custodians and secretaries have to continue to support one another so that we can become that world-class school district. I thank you for being a captive audience this morning. You guys didn't even budge. I thank you for that. Please join your principals in the respective rooms that are listed on the agenda, and I will see you back here at 10 o'clock.
Greetings. Welcome to the new school year. Let me say a word about what happened today at our convocation. Dr. Chase opened the day with all of the faculty and all staff of the district here, welcomed them, invited them to participate in the workshops of the day. We had some opening remarks from Greenberg Supervisor Mr. Feiner and Board President David Warner, and of course greetings from union officials. After the large group meeting with Dr. Chase and dignitaries, our principals had building level meetings so that faculty meetings were conducted. Then we moved directly into UDL presentations on how to prepare lesson plans that are adaptable to all of our students.
We are in our second year of our UDL training, and we talked about making sure that we can pull the very best of our children. And we recognize that not all of our children learn the same way at the same time. And we also recognize that our children also need multiple ways to demonstrate how well they have learned. We're so proud to continue our work with Nicole Tucker-Smith. She has brought her entourage today and working with the team at CAS to help us to revolutionize how we deliver instruction. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce you to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, and Personnel, Dr. Ronald Valente, who has led us with the UDL and so many other initiatives. So let's give Dr. Valente a thunderous round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. I always bring my own mic. And Miriam, you must have the luck of the Irish. I'm telling you. You're always winning something. Good for you. Anyway, delighted to be back with you. Delighted to work with you again this year. And quite frankly, I'll be our conscience on data and looking very hard at the data and looking at the board's goals, the strategic plan fashioned by the superintendent and the board, and looking at that 5% growth from year to year. Dr. Chase spoke movingly about bias in our society, and hard bias for the most part. There is a soft bias too, of low expectations.
And it's that soft bias that we need to take a real hard look at. I've been a superintendent in different places, and I guess I could talk to you about a tale of two cities. I've been in Poughkeepsie and Valley Stream High School District, where, quite frankly, students were challenged. And we wanted to make very sure that every one of those students had every opportunity to succeed, irrespective of the challenges they faced. And I've been in other cities called Blackbrook, where children were not as challenged in the same fashion, challenged in other ways, I could assure you. But all the resources were there, all the opportunities were there, and quite frankly, the very high expectations were there. We need to be sure, each and every one of us, starting with yours truly, the board, the superintendent, every administrator and teacher, that we only have the highest expectations for our students. I'm going to give you a set of numbers: 30, 40, and 50. In fact, yesterday I mentioned at teacher's orientation the Pythagorean theorem, 3, 4, and 5. 30% represents the aggregate percentage of our students, Greenberg students, successful in ELA and math. 40% is the aggregate percentage of students at levels 3 and 4, proficient mastery, in New York State. 50% represents the percentage of students proficient, level 3 and 4, in Westchester County. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Greenberg is in Westchester County, and I think it's a logical conclusion that we should be no less than 50%. Now, how do we get from 30 to 50? The board has laid out the strategic plan with the superintendent. The focus needs to be each day on how well we teach, how effectively we instruct. And that is something that the data needs to be looked at hard and clear. There are no excuses. We cannot in any way use the excuse of, well, it's a changing population. Every child who shows up at any grade level should have the same opportunities and should be worked with intensively to achieve the goals. UDL is one of the several techniques. Literacy is another. We're delighted that we have an initiative now with Laurie DeAndrea working with us. The Wilson is another. Our focus on who is teaching what subjects is another. Our Saturday Academy is another. I could go on. There's a myriad of efforts afoot. But the question every day I will be asking, and I hope you join me in asking, is our students, do our students perform better than yesterday? If not, why not? We've even spent time reinvigorating our PLCs to ensure that the right questions are asked by the right people who are sitting in this room. So let's not let up on the intensity. Let's keep the highest expectations. And I know our CAS team from UDL, with UDL, will be working with us. Nicole Tucker-Smith, Ari Fleischer will be joining us today, and Michael Burton. Did I get that right? Matt. Sorry, Matt. Okay. So, here we are, UDL. Have a great year. Let's work together. Nicole Tucker-Smith. Okay?
Good morning. So thank you so much for having me back and having our team here today. Again, Nicole Tucker-Smith. I am a member of the UDL cadre, and so I had the opportunity to come to districts like Greenberg and help with multi-year implementations of UDL. So this is year 2, which I have to tell you is the most exciting year. UDL 101 is kind of fun. UDL 102 is where the rubber really meets the road. And so just a quick reminder and then an introduction for those of you who did not meet me last year. I started as a teacher in Virginia. I actually went to UVA, and so those words this morning were really powerful for me as well. I taught in Virginia as well as in Baltimore, Maryland. I also was an administrator, a principal, and a system-wide coordinator of professional development and training. And it's through all of those experiences, but also the experience of being a parent, that I really understand the power and impact of universal design for learning. So we're excited about continuing the journey.
My name is Ari Fleischer. I am a UDL implementation specialist at CAST. So that means all year round, all day long, I get to talk and breathe and think UDL all over the country, which is really exciting. Before that, I've worked in largely K-8 settings in the Boston Public Schools. So CAST is located just outside of Boston. And when I was teaching 2nd grade, I looked at my class of 26 kids and said, all 26 of them learn differently. Am I supposed to do things 26 different ways? And that's part of the reason I went back and got my master's in prevention, which is sort of that lens of how do we really look at tier 1 instruction really intentionally, so we're getting the most bang for our buck up front. And that's what brought me to UDL and CAST, and I've never looked back. So I'm very thrilled to be here. A couple of logistics, some people saw this when they came in. Are people familiar with Padlet? Just give me a head shake. Kind of. It's a really great way to distribute resources and to share resources. So if you would like, we have a very low-tech day for you today, because we learned from the technology can be a barrier. But padlet.com/castudl/GCSD is where you're going to get all the resources. So if you'd like to follow along with the PowerPoint on your computer, feel free to do that. Or later on throughout the year, this will be a resource for us to share all sorts of things. So our goal for today is really to examine the core concepts of UDL and understand the 3 neural networks that make up UDL, and really deepen the connections between UDL and Danielson. So this afternoon, we're going to be in breakout groups, so you'll be in one of 3 rooms with me, Nicole, or Matt. And we'll be looking at classroom videos to really say, what does UDL look like in practice? What is evidence of this framework? And then you'll get a chance to apply UDL to your own context. So first, we're going to start with some UDL core concepts. And then we're going to dig into UDL and the highly effective teacher, everybody's favorite lunch, and then those breakout sessions as I described. Okay, so we're going to start digging right in.
All right, so now recognizing that this is year 2, we're going to talk about, the bulk of today is going to be talking about what does universal design for learning look like, and talking about what does UDL look like here at Greenberg. What does it look like here at GCSD? And first, I have a question for you. I'm about to show you an image. It's somewhat of a slightly famous picture. So if you recognize the image, I'm going to ask that you refrain from shouting out to give everyone some think time and to process and come up with their own answer. But I'm going to ask you, what do you see? So take a moment, form your own opinion. What do you see here? Okay, so now let's hear from you. You can go ahead and shout it out. What do you see? Yes? Cow. You see a cow? Does anybody else see a cow? Does anybody see something other than a cow? What else do you see? A wolf?
Globe.
Yes?
Globe.
A globe? Okay. Oh, yeah, like kind of the continents and the globe. Right, yeah. Now, sometimes this is somewhat of a metaphor for professional development. Sometimes when you come in, you may feel like professional development may feel like a few blobs here, a few blobs there, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Oh, I'm going to just wait this out. It's the flavor of the month. Well, guess what? UDL is now in year 2, And you all have a series of initiatives that are really well interconnected. So let's talk about what this picture really is. And it is in fact a cow. It is in fact a cow. And you may not have seen it before, but once we provide these lines, once we provide the context, you almost can't unsee it. You almost can't unsee the hidden cow in this picture. And this is going to be a day about providing context. Putting all the pieces together, having a common vision for what UDL looks like. What it looks like when it's done effectively, and what it looks like when it's done in your classrooms. And part of pulling all the pieces together is about understanding how UDL relates to the other initiatives that you have in place in order for your students to be successful. And UDL is not just one more initiative. It's not one more thing to do. It's not something to add to your plate. This is something I mentioned last time I was here, but rather UDL is a tool to help lighten your already heavy load. It's not a rock, it's a wheel. It's a tool to help us move forward. It may be slow in the beginning, so in the beginning, they don't want to take the time to change the square wheel for a round wheel. They're like, no thanks, we're too busy. But if we take the time up front to be proactive, to get the right tools in place, then we can move forward faster. So let's take a moment to think about how UDL relates to some of the other essential practices that you have in place here. What's UDL got to do with it anyway? Right? So what does UDL have to do, for example, with the Danielson Framework for Teaching, which undergirds your teacher evaluation? What does it have to do with your PLCs, which are active to support your professional learning? And what does it have to do with the IB program? How do all of these things relate? Well, first, just a quick definition. Now, this is my definition of UDL. By the end of the day, you are going to have your own definition of UDL. But just as a quick review, quick reminder, UDL is not a program that you can pull out of a box. It's something that you can just buy it. I'm going to buy some UDL and do it now. UDL it's a framework, right? It's a framework to help us as educators provide options for our students that proactively address their learner variability. So we don't have to wait until we meet our students next week to already start thinking about how we're going to proactively address their variability that we can anticipate in advance. So what does that have to do with PLCs? What does having a framework to proactively address learner variability have to do with PLCs? Well, PLCs ask these 4 questions, right? Oh, look what Microsoft did to my numbers. It said 1, 2, 3, 4. But Microsoft doesn't like to play with Mac, so it changed everything to 1. They're all important questions. But thinking about what do we expect our students to learn, UDL is about having really clear goals and not lowering those goals, not lowering expectations, but being really clear on those goals so that we can provide multiple means for achieving them. How will we know that they are learning? It's about providing multiple means of assessment so we know whether or not they're achieving those goals. But really, UDL is about number 3. How will we respond when they don't learn? UDL gives us a proactive framework for addressing that question, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But it also helps us think about how we respond if they already know it, because UDL is not about lowering expectations, lowering standards, or using the term that I don't like, dumbing things down, or spoon-feeding students. It's not about that. It's about designing for both ends of the margins. Thinking about students who already know it, and thinking about students who are still struggling in order to learn it. And then we can also apply that same logic to the IB program. It's about having high standards and thinking about multiple means of engagement, representation, action and expression. You can see that with rigorous assessment, it's not about not assessing, but about in multiple ways to assess. And then lastly, one of the things we're going to talk about today, we're just going to start the conversation about how UDL relates to being a highly effective teacher in the Danielson Framework.
That workshop continued till about noon when folks stopped for lunch. And now they're all back in workshops broken out by schools where they're working on individual adaptation of lesson plans to students from grades ECP, pre-K, right up through 12th grade. The outcome for today is that we align our lesson plans with the Danielson framework, which is what we evaluate all teachers on in terms of instruction. And also a second outcome is that we enrich our lesson plans so that we're adapting them to the variations of every student learner, that there is no one set way to learn. There are many ways to learn, and that different technologies need to be brought forth in order for students to master learning. We'll continue UDL training through the year at our November and March conference days, and teachers are very excited and ready to go on September the 5th. We look forward to seeing you all then.